Most of you have probably never lived outside of the state, or maybe even in the same house your whole lives. That, however, is not the case for me. In my opinion, moving is an experience like no other, whether it's to a different state or a different house. Moving has broadened my horizons and shaped me to the person I am today. It has taught me a lot about myself, where I want to be, and where I want to go. Moving has been one of the greatest and one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, and for that I am thankful to be where I am today. I was so young the first time I moved, so I can't tell you much about it. I can tell you it was for the good of my family, even though it made us farther away from them. At the time, my parents only had 5 kids: Brittany, Jacob, Jonna, myself, and my younger brother, Nicholas. Brittany and Jacob could probably tell you a lot about our small house in Blairsville, Pennsylvania, but I, however, cannot. I've only seen the inside in pictures that my mom keeps. My dad makes it his mission to drive past it every time we go to Pennsylvania, but he says it looks a lot different now. Where my mom's gardens used to be, there is now just grass, and our swing set isn't in the backyard anymore. My first memories are in New York. I remember only having one air conditioner, so on extremely hot days, all the kids would sleep, everyone would camp out in the living room, or all the kids would sleep on a blow-up mattress in my parents' room. I don't remember my little sister Cecilia being born, but I can remember the Christmas I found out I was going to have 2 little sisters instead of 1. I remember coming home from kindergarten every day, sitting with my little sister Abby, watching TV while my mom made us a Nutella sandwich. I remember a lot about New York, but no reason not to move, that is except for my sister. Brittany had just graduated high school and had the option to stay or come with us. She chose to stay and attend the University of Albany with her boyfriend at the time, Tim. She was fine with this at first. That was until her and Tim broke up a few months later and she became homesick for her family. She continued on, as did we. We moved to a small town called Williamson, West Virginia, and went to a small school of 34 kids. No, that is not just my class. That was the whole school. We met a lot of great people. My family was best friends with the Sarton family. The Sarton family consisted of the mom and dad, Odell and Jennifer. Nick was my younger brother Nick's age. Julia, she was a year older than me. We did everything together. The Sartons were always there for us. Like when our cats brought lice into the house, we stayed at their house until it got tented. Or when Julia cut my finger off on Cecilia's birthday, Jennifer took her out to distract her. They meant a lot to us as we did to them. They were a big reason to stay, but nothing compared to my best friend Meredith. Meredith and I did everything together. I was always at her house or she was at mine. I was drugged to every single one of her dance recitals and sat there next to her mom and 2 big brothers while she came off stage. She was my first best friend I can remember, and I think that's what made moving a little harder. I can remember the events leading up to moving. Williamson was a very poor town, and that wasn't going to change. My parents were always talking and whispering behind closed doors. In a house of 6 kids, we knew something was up. We started talking and whispering ourselves. As the 6 of us thought we figured it out. Mom was pregnant again. We figured out that was not the case when our parents sat us down and told us we were moving again. You can imagine our surprise when the word Minnesota came out of their mouth afterwards. It wasn't a big deal to anyone that we were moving. No one really saw life in West Virginia. We visited the Sartons a few times since we moved, but other than that, we haven't looked back. That brings me to Minnesota. We've been in Minnesota since I was in 4th grade. This is the longest I've ever lived in one place at a time. I have lived some of my most important years and met some of the most important people in my life. The first year we moved here, my family fell in love with the state. My parents promised it was the last move, and we believed them. I watched my family cling on to things in Minnesota, like every time we painted the walls in our house, or every time my dad told us his plans for the house after all the kids moved out. That never happened in our old houses. Now, fast forward to May, I can honestly say no one saw this coming. Me, always working or with friends, was oblivious to anything happening within the household. My dad called myself and Jonna into his room and told us that we were going to move again. Jonna had the option to stay or leave. She was about to graduate high school and she wanted to attend the College of St. Ben's no matter what. Her friends and boyfriend were only more of a reason to stay. I, however, did not have the option. If my family moved, I had to move. I was a wreck after I got this news. I did not take it lightly, and I couldn't have gone through without a few very special people to me. The first one being my very best friend, Jennifer. I left my house that night telling my parents I was staying at Jennifer's, which was very believable because obviously we had things to talk about. Jen always had her way of making me feel better. She gave me a place of security, knowing whatever I was going through, I wasn't going through alone. She was always enough to make me feel better, but staying at Jen's house was not what I wanted to do that night, and it wasn't what she wanted to do either. We sat and talked for a little bit, and we decided to go where we both felt most at home, Melrose. Our first stop was to someone's house who was making jokes about everything and took nothing seriously, Matthew. This, however, was not the case. No jokes were made, he hugged me, and we left. That brings me to Lenny. We then went to Lenny's house. At the time, Lenny and I were not talking, but he has always been there for me in the past. I texted him and asked him if we could come over, and he said we could. Nothing he said really made me feel better. I don't know what I was looking for him, but I didn't find it. Jen and I ended up staying there that night. The next morning, school was the last place I wanted to be. Jen and Lenny decided to stay home from school too. I texted my mom, I don't think I'm going to school today, and by no surprise, it was followed by a very angry call from her. I made it extremely clear to her that moving was not what I wanted to do. With much discussion within my family and a few tantrums from me, my parents decided moving was not the best thing for everyone. I've grown and lost so much in the past couple years, but one thing I'm glad I haven't lost is my place here in Minnesota. I don't know if it's the people I've met, how long I've been here, or the things I've gone through that makes Minnesota feel like home. I do one day want to move out of the state, but right now my place is here.